Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's installment of the Bama Factor. I'm your host, as always, Alex Taylor, and we made it through the bye week, ladies and gentlemen. Um, Again, 2 bye weeks for each team this year, and just so happy to be back. Happy to be here. I'm in a little bit of a different location. Came up to my parents' house. I've got to travel to Tennessee this weekend. I am the best man in my cousin's wedding, so that is the reason that I'm home here. I'll be traveling to Tennessee tomorrow, so kind of doing the podcast a day late. Had a long week. Didn't get a chance to do it last night, but bringing it to you guys now. So super happy to be here. We got a lot to unpack this episode, so I'm super excited about what we can uncover in this. So just a little bit about the bye week. Obviously Alabama and LSU both coming off of a bye week. You always want to be sure. When you get when you have a bye week, this is your opportunity to fix things. It's your opportunity to get healthy. It's your opportunity to really make those adjustments and really get ready for really the month of November. And I always really appreciate Alabama having this week as the bye week, right before LSU, especially going to LSU. It's always a big game with huge implications, and this year it does have implications that we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show. But for the bye week, some things that I saw, from practice footage, the energy was there. Some guys, obviously getting healthy. Injury report came out today. Keon Sabb is still out, obviously. Dealing with a broken foot. So Brayson Hubbard will still go at that safety position, and probably a few other guys will rotate as well. But didn't see some other guys on that injury report like Red Morgan and Devontae Smith. So that means that these guys are healthy as well. So super happy to see that our guys are very healthy and that our guys are going to continue to have a chance to play this Saturday as well. But really just in practice, like I said, everybody looked crisp. Everybody just the intensity was up. I heard a lot of good things. Especially from the coaching staff this week about the intensity in practice, about the attention to detail, and how we're just gonna claw and scrap. Harder than you've ever seen us really do that. So I'm super excited about what this team is going to bring Saturday night, and we've got to bring the juice for sure. And now, kind of moving into, as we get to talk about this game, last year, we saw Alabama come into this game, and LSU was also coming in as well. They had the eventual Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels coming in. The defense, on the other hand, left a little to be desired for LSU. Still had Harold Perkins, but their secondary was not good. The run defense was not good as well. And you just really saw each of these quarterbacks just really just go off in this game. I was personally at that game last year, and I kept, I remember I kept telling my dad, I said, no matter who wins this game, I said at the end of this game, Jalen and Jaden need to go, you know, right on that script A in midfield, and they need to shake each other's hands, and they need to say respect to the other one. Like, they need to say much respect, like you played a heck of a game. But, this is kind of where we saw Jalen Milroe take that next step, and we found that offensive groove that fit his play style. He threw for over 220 yards last year, but where he really got it done was probably the best game of his career outside of Georgia this year. 16 carries for 177 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground, accounting for 28 of the Tide's 42 points as they beat LSU last year 42 to 28. Obviously, the Tide defense figured out Jaden Daniels in the second half, only allowing 7 points. The Tigers scored on their first drive to go up 28 to 21. And, the Tide, they didn't look back from that point on. They really got the run game going, ran for over 350 yards in that game last year. Jalen having a lot of those. All touchdowns were scored on the ground. We had a couple guys score some touchdowns last year as well. And the defense, came up huge as well with some interceptions and some stops in the second half. The Tide a year ago, this was a huge game a year ago. So really for Jalen now, I think kind of like I talked about in last week's episode, I think he has been hurt. I think he's at least been hobbled. But you don't want to publicly come out and say that. You don't want to, first of all, instill panic in your team. You don't want to let any other team know any potential weakness in your quarterback as well. But I think really the bye week came at a good time for Jalen to get healthy and, to kind of get his mind right as well. Because it seems like just these last couple weeks, ever since that Vanderbilt game, he's just kind of struggled. He just hasn't been the same Jalen that we saw against Georgia. And I think it's big from a physical standpoint first and foremost, and but it's also big from a mental standpoint. After all these weeks of playing football, especially high level football, and going on the road to places, you're mentally drained at this point. You need that week to kind of refresh. Go watch some film, study what you're doing wrong, study what you're doing right. Try to do the things that you're doing good. Try to do them great now, and the things that you're struggling on, try to turn those into strengths. And really kind of address your game and be honest with yourself. And I think that's something that Jalen does extremely well. He is extremely honest with himself. I think he holds himself higher to a higher standard than anybody else on this team, and that in turn, allows him to hold his teammates to that same standard. He's every definition of a leader. That's why he's a two-time captain. And everybody looks to him. And I think this Saturday, is a game where he can cement his legacy at Alabama. You're going into Tiger Stadium, you're going into Death Valley at night. You're playing against an amped up LSU team, who is coming off of a loss. You're playing against, a better defense than you played against a year ago. But they are without Harold Perkins, but, they do have, Sage Ryan. He's playing at his natural position now at safety. They still have Major Burns. They've got a lot of really quality guys on the defensive line. Their line's a lot better this year. They still have some very, very good linebackers and edge guys as well. So, it's going to present a challenge for Alabama. It's going to present a challenge for the offensive line, especially, in a hostile crowd. You've got to be very disciplined. You can't have false starts. You can't have holdings. You can't have snap infractions. And, you've got to communicate very well. You're obviously not going to have the crowd on your side, especially in Death Valley. It's a very tough place to play. But, you've got to go in there and you've got to, have command of the offense. And I think Jalen, in this game, there's a lot of people saying, a lot of the media experts saying that, he's not going to win this game, throwing the football. He's not going to beat LSU with his arm. And, he's going to have to open up the run game. And, along with Jam and Justice and Richard Young, they've got to open up the run game. And I think that's true. I think that you need to open up the run game because LSU has struggled against the run. They've allowed at least 130 rushing yards in their last 6 games so far. And, Texas A&M obviously ran all over them in the second half when they brought in Marcel Reed. Could not stop a dual threat quarterback. Couldn't stop their running backs. And, Texas A&M ended up running for over 300 yards on them. So I think if you get this going, it has the potential to be a really good night for the Crimson Tide on offense. But Jalen, I think he needs to take this game one snap at a time, one play at a time, one drive at a time. And I think if he lets the game come to him and that he does what he's supposed to, steps into his throws and just, really kind of delivers a flawless game and just doesn't go out there and think too much. He just goes out there and he just plays ball. I think that's what's going to really get Jalen over the top in this game. And now kind of switching to the other side. Actually, I'm going to touch on one more thing on the offense. So something else I want to see, and, I think what'll be an X factor in this game is, really some of the wide receivers. And, kind of in retrospect, and, kind of just in specific, Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, and Kendrick Law. I think those are 3 guys that you got to watch, that trio, because I think Kendrick Law can be an X factor in this game as he can be used in the backfield. He can be used on jet sweeps. I like it when we use him on jet sweeps. He's very quick at getting to the corner and, just quick slant patterns over the middle. Ryan Williams, we've got to take the top off in this game. I think their secondary is a little bit suspect. I think, we can really get after that. And, Jeremy obviously is becoming extremely reliable as the season goes on. And, these guys get more, in tune with each other as the season goes on. The chemistry grows. I'm excited, hopefully to see Caleb Odom. Emmanuel Henderson can make a huge impact in the game on Saturday. You got guys like Kobe Prentice. Kobe's kind of coming off of a rough game 2 weeks ago against Missouri. Had a couple drops in that game. Just really wasn't himself. But, again, use that off week to, really get your head straight, physically get your, get healthy and that's how you can really bounce back. I think somebody's going to kind of be the unsung hero on that in that wide receiver group, and it may be somebody that we don't expect. It could be a Jaron Hamilton. It could potentially open up the opportunities, like I said, for Caleb Odom now that Cole Adams is out. You open up a lot of opportunities. It could be Rico Scott, could be Amari Jefferson, it could be some of these true freshmen we haven't seen yet. So I'm super excited about just getting to see what this offense brings. The offensive line's going to have a big challenge. Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchard are going to have, two very good edge rushers coming at them off of the edges. On the inside, we're going to have to collapse, and, we're going to have to really be sure that we pick up our blocking assignments and that we communicate well. The running backs are going to have to hit holes. We're going to have to establish that run game. We're going to have to wear down LSU because, that's what you have to do when you play at Tiger Stadium. You've got to wear them down. And like I said, hard place to play, tough place to win too. It's going to be rocking Saturday night. So now, kind of going to the other side of the ball, we heard earlier this week Jahad Campbell speak to the media, and he described the Alabama defense as they have this starving mentality. They have this just this hungry mentality that they're just ready to compete. They're ready to do everything at the highest level. They're ready to give 110% effort. And I love hearing that from, one of the alphas on the defense, especially like Jahad Campbell, a guy who's been very reliable this year, a guy who's a very good hitter, a guy who is, a great tackler. He plays the game at a high level. He's a very good, has extremely good instincts when shooting the gap. He's got very good instincts, knowing which way the play's going. He's not really out of position that much. There may be one or two times you kind of catch him either flat-footed or on his heels or maybe out of position, but it's not often. He usually corrects it, and it's just a guy who, is just a really fundamentally sound football player. So I think, when you hear a guy talk like that and you hear, the attitude of the defense, that's the attitude you want to have. The fact that he said they're starving. He said we're starving. We're hungry and we're practically starving. That's something that you want to hear as a fan. That's something that you love to hear, the intensity-wise, that they're holding each other accountable. And, they're doing those TNT things. And for those of you who don't know what TNT means, kind of after we lost to Tennessee, we kind of had a thing that now we have a thing that's called TNT, and it's called Takes No Talent. And, that's just giving effort. That's running through the whistle. That's making a good tackle. That's hitting your gap assignment. That's communicating well. That's stuff that takes no talent, just giving effort each and every play. And I think with the defense, an opportunity to get healthy. But then you look at some of the guys who are emerging, like Brayson Hubbard in the Missouri game, taking the place of Keon Sabb. Brayson Hubbard's going to be huge this Saturday, as we're going up against a very good offense in LSU. Garrett Nussmeier and, Kyron Lacey. You got Josh Williams in the backfield. You've got several other guys, and, they got one of the best offensive lines in the country. They obviously have Emory Jones Jr. They have Will Campbell. They're going to be without one of their linemen, but, they have two of the best tackles in the country. They haven't surrendered a lot of sacks this year. I think they've surrendered 7 total this year, so, they don't give up a lot of sacks. So that's something that the Alabama defense has got to pride themselves on, is really getting after the quarterback and really making life hard, for a Garrett in the pocket. And, he's not Jaden Daniels. He doesn't have that really dynamic, quick twitch ability, to get out into the open space and really make you miss. Now, he still has the ability to run. He's got, in my opinion, he's got some underrated running ability. But I think overall, when you look at him, he's a very good pocket passer. He's a guy who's going to be accurate. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes. But, if you force him into him, and you got to make him uncomfortable, is the biggest thing. I think, we've got to get pressure. We've got to stay in our gaps. And, they have some very good receivers as well. Kyron Lacey, Aaron Anderson, who was once at Alabama. Aaron Anderson has the potential to get into the open. He's very fast. He's got very good speed and very good hands. But Kyron Lacey's kind of, his go-to guy. And, he's going to be on islands, with the likes of Domani Jackson. He's going to be on islands with guys like true freshman Zabian Brown. So, Garrett's going to look to exploit, when he has a younger guy on him. He could get matched up with a safety every once in a while, but, we've got to make sure we play our lanes and we can't let him get going. We've got to do our best to really shut him down Saturday night. They've got a good run game that they can get going as well. They have a stale of 2 or 3 good tailbacks, just kind of like Alabama does. So this might be a battle of, who can get the run game going more. Like I said, their offensive line, choose. But when you look at Alabama's defense, and, you look at how they're playing, they've kind of seem to have turned that corner. And like I said, even in the Tennessee game, Alabama did their job on defense. 3 turnovers. They were holding Dylan Sampson, to 1-2 yards a carry, in the first 3 quarters. And, like I said, creating turnovers, getting pressure on Nico. Um, and but just the offense didn't help him out that day. Same thing against Missouri. The offense kind of caught up, in the second half and got going, but the defense was holding, Luther Burden, probably one of the best receivers in the SEC, to 3 total receiving yards that day. They held Theo Meese to, 12 yards receiving. So, when you hold their top 2 receivers to 15 yards receiving total and only 5 catches, that's pretty doggone good. And still had a good rushing attack, and they still shut that down. Again, forced 3 turnovers. The offense did a way better job than they did in the Tennessee game of forcing and actually converting those turnovers into points. So that's what you got to do this Saturday. You've got to force Garrett into mistakes. And if you kind of saw the tale of 2 halves against Texas A&M, they go up 21-7 at halftime, and Garrett comes out. He threw 2 touchdowns in the first half. He looked flawless, and then the second half, Texas A&M really made adjustments, and they pick him off not once, not twice, but 3 times, and that really caused Garrett to be like in this state of mind of where he was seeing ghosts out there, and that's what Alabama's got to do. I think now with Alabama catching on with this 4-2-5 scheme from Kane Womack, I really think these guys are starting to really obviously get comfortable with it. We're late in the season. They've had a lot of experience to get used to this, but especially the last 2 weeks, I've seen a whole lot of improvement, from this defense, and I think they're turning a corner, as I talked about last week. So you want the starving mentality. You want that mentality to go out there and compete. You want the mentality to go out there and claw and scratch. It's going to be a physical game. It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's a game that's going to be won in the trenches. Who can establish the run, who can stop the run. So, it's going to be really on both of the lines, I think. I think your X factors in this game is Alabama's offensive line against LSU's defensive line, and also the opposite of that, LSU's offensive line against the defensive line of Alabama. I think that is what is key in this game. And just watch Saturday night. Watch the run game. Watch who can establish it. Because if you can wear down the other defense, it's going to be a long night for the other side as well. So now just talking about even the bigger implications in this game. The CFP implications in this game. Alabama 6-2, LSU 6-2. What is being really deemed as a college football playoff elimination game, and I have to agree with that as well, because when you look at these two teams, LSU, tough loss at the beginning of the season against USC, a new kind of revamped USC team, but now USC's kind of fallen lower as well. And then, LSU, 2 weeks ago has a lead going into halftime at Texas A&M, and then just comes out in the second half and just absolutely just blows it and just implodes and turns the ball over and can't score. And they can't stop the new quarterback who came in. And so you lose your first SEC game, but now LSU has the opportunity to, have an off week, come back home and play in one of their biggest games of the season. Alabama, same thing. Alabama, obviously they beat Georgia, the 4-0 on top of the world, and, boom, tragedy strikes, and, you get beat by Vanderbilt, a team that, you weren't ever expected to get beat by. And then, you bounce back at South Carolina the next week, even though it was a struggle. And then you go in Tennessee and you lose a tough game at Tennessee. And so now all of a sudden, you're like, we can't lose anymore. And then, you got a tough Missouri team, and then you got a bye week. And I think the Missouri game gave them a lot of momentum going forward. And, this game is so vitally important Saturday. It's so important for Alabama. This is going to be, really one of those games that, is going to go ahead and tell us, it's going to define what Kalen DeBoer's first season is really going to be like as you go into the month of November. It's going to be paramount. It's going to be key. And again, playoff implications, Alabama comes in at 11, LSU just on the outside looking in at 14. So, a win for LSU, kind of pretty much vaults them into the next CFP rankings next Tuesday. It kind of vaults them into, the top 12, and this more than likely would drop Alabama out of the top 12 with really no chance to get back into it at this point. I think they would drop too far unless utter chaos just happened. So this game has huge implications this weekend. And now I kind of got asked this on my page not too long ago, but just reviewing some of the best Alabama LSU moments. So I'm actually going to go with my favorite ones And some of these are going to be games that I personally gone to. I have actually gone to every Alabama LSU home game since 2011. Starting in 2011, I went to the game of the century. 2 years later, in 2013, went. In 2015, when we shut down Leonard Fournette, I went. 2017, went. 2019, game of the century part two, where we lost to Joe Burrow. Went to that game. 2021, the one where we squeaked it out against a tough Ed Orgeron squad, and then obviously last year, the battle between the two quarterbacks, Jalen and Jaden. But some of my favorite moments. The first one I'll talk about is really kind of 2009. I was sitting right here at my parents' house, and Alabama was undefeated at that point. LSU I think had one loss, and playing LSU hadn't really we were up 15-13 in the fourth quarter, and it was kind of tough because offensively wasn't doing that much, but the defense was keeping us in the game in 2009. And Julio Jones breaks off a 73-yard touchdown reception, and that just kind of just made Bryant-Denny Stadium go absolutely electric at that point. And Alabama never really looked back from that point. Getting interceptions at the end of the game, and getting sacks at the end of the game, and obviously winning that game, and on their way to winning a national title. 2011, also, I was at the game of the century where we lost 9-6. Just what a defensive war that was that night. And I remember driving back to Birmingham because we lived 2 hours away, and me and Dad just decided to stay in Birmingham for the night since the game got over so late. And I remember telling him, I said, Dad, we're going to play that team again. And he says, I sure hope so. And sure enough, the cards fell the right way, and LSU won the SEC title. And we had one loss to LSU, and people said we didn't deserve to be in the national title that year. And obviously, we go in their backyard in New Orleans, and me and my dad went. We didn't get tickets, so we stayed in Gulfport, Mississippi, and we watched the game. And one of the best defensive performances I think in college football history. The Tide defense allowed 92 total yards. They crossed midfield once, and we pushed them right back across it. And, we finally scored a touchdown in between them. Trent Richardson finished his career in style, and we won our second title in 3 years under Nick Saban. Just what a performance that was. 2015 was one of my favorites. Leonard Fournette came in the Heisman front runner. Derrick Henry was kind of like 2 or 3 at that point. And, they say, this could be, who's ahead in the playoff. LSU had one loss at the point. We had one loss. LSU was number 2. We were number 4. And, we came in that night, absolutely dominated Leonard Fournette. The defense was so sick and tired of hearing about, how many yards he had run for in other games, how good he was. And, 19 carries for 31 yards that night. Just absolutely shut down that night. Jake Coker had a good night. Obviously, Derrick Henry rushed for over 240 yards that night. The final 8.5 minutes of the game, we just ran the ball, and we ran out the clock. Just beautiful clock time management, if you ask me. Absolutely electric atmosphere. 2023 last year was awesome to see. Two great quarterbacks really battling it out. The second half, obviously, Alabama pulled away. I was a part of the broken record at Bryant-Denny Stadium when they broke the decibel record at Bryant-Denny when Terrion Arnold intercepted off the tip pass to start the fourth quarter to set up, another Alabama touchdown. That was huge. But one of my favorite moments in the Alabama-LSU rivalry was 2012 when Alabama was trailing 17-14, with a minute and 30 seconds to go with no timeouts, and had to go 75 yards. And Kevin Norwood and A.J. McCarron hooked up for 4 straight passes, all for first downs. And then with about a minute left, A.J. drops back and throws a screen pass to T.J. Yeldon in the flat, and T.J. makes a man miss, as Kenny Stabler said. Up there in the booth with Eli Gold, he made a man miss at about the 20-yard line and went into the end zone. And then Alabama obviously ended up winning that ball game in 2012, again on their way to a national title. So a lot of good moments in this rivalry. You can go back to the records that Alabama has set in this. There was a point at where Alabama didn't lose in Death Valley from 1969 to like 2004. It was an insane stat. I think when you look at just the implications of this rivalry, there's been no bigger rivalry, especially in the Nick Saban era, being these the two schools that he coached at, and he's going to be there again for game day Saturday, so that's going to be absolutely huge. But now I'm going to get to my prediction. I've thought long and hard about this for 2 weeks. I've really analyzed each of these teams, and with it being in Death Valley, we're favored by 2.5. It's very, it's tough. But if we get the version of Jalen Milroe I know we're capable of getting, I think Alabama can win by 10. If he struggles, it could be a loss by 7. It could be a loss by 10 or 13. It could be a close win. But like I said, so the X factors to this game is whoever establishes the running game, who wins the battle in the trenches, and which quarterback is going to make the least amount of mistakes. Which quarterback is going to have. So those are the biggest factors here. But as it stands right now, I think this might be a defensive war. It seems like it always is at LSU. Alabama's never just had these high-scoring affairs at LSU. You've never really seen that at LSU. If you even go back to 2012, it was 21-17. You go back to 2014, it was, I think it was around the same thing, maybe like 17-10. 16 was 10-0. 18 was 29-0, and it was just grinded out. Now 2020 was a blowout for Alabama. But then, 22, Alabama loses by 2 on the last play of the game in overtime. So, you just really look at these. They're more high scoring when they go to Tuscaloosa, but, usually in Tiger Stadium, they're not that much. But Alabama's defense has got to play lights out this Saturday. Their offense has got to be efficient. They've got to work long drives. They got to establish the run game. And if they do that, I can see, the prediction I'm about to say coming true. And I think Alabama, if they can do everything and all the above that I just said, I think Alabama can get a win in Tiger Stadium and improve to 7-2 on the season headed into the Mercer game next week. I think they can improve 7-2 with a win 27-21 in Tiger Stadium. I'm going to keep it close. I think Alabama can pull away in the fourth quarter, and their defense can get some stops and grind it out. But I think creating turnovers is going to be key. The last 3 games from South Carolina to the Missouri game, Alabama has created 10 turnovers in those 3 games. 4 against South Carolina, 3 apiece against Tennessee and Missouri. So that's going to be paramount this game. Creating turnovers and creating negative plays, pressuring Garrett in the pocket, and honestly sacking him as well. That's going to do something to his psyche. He hasn't been sacked a lot this year, but I think that's going to be some huge factors. But I look forward to it. I'm getting to watch the game with my dad after the wedding Saturday. The wedding's at 4:00, so I'll get to watch it. But I hope you guys have a great football Saturday. I also want to give a shout out to Kurt Herbstreit. He lost his dog. He lost Ben, and I know what it's like to lose a dog, Kirk. They're part of your family. You bring them in. You love them. They become part of you. Especially with you. It being your service dog, and I know that he was loyal to you. The relationship he had with you. Seeing him on college game day, seeing him traveling with you. I know y'all had a lot of good times together and just a lot of good memories, and I know that's tough. And I know it'll be tough this weekend, it being your first weekend without him traveling with you in 10 years. So I know that's going to be tough for you, Kirk. But, my heart goes out to you, Kirk. I love you, man. Look forward to hearing you call the game Saturday night as well. But if you even see this, I hope you do. But otherwise, guys, love you guys. Appreciate your support on the page. We are doing so well this year. I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. But anyway, guys, y'all have a great college football Saturday. Y'all be safe. Good night. God bless. And roll tide.